Pecha Kucha 250, Marvel's Ruins and Grodd. So I've been continuing with this idea of like 1 hour sessions, just sitting down to do something. It doesn't matter what, but the idea is that it's I'm practicing discipline. And a lot of the things I did this week weren't even art related. But one of the ones I did was this idea of taking some of these old Gundam sketches I did a few months ago and just seeing if I can mess around with grayscale to determine interesting contrast-based lighting. So I've, the first one I was just trying to figure out what it was I was trying to figure out, and the second one was like, it's about internal lighting and then global lighting. So like the idea of this one is like this Gundam is standing under some trees, and you can see like the shadows of the trees. I feel like this works. It wasn't necessarily a conclusive experiment, but I did do my hour. And I did find myself inadvertently looking at leg anatomy later on in the evening by accident. I didn't really mean to start doing observational sketches and improving my knowledge. And what a bizarre thing it is to be doing the thing you know you should be doing by accident. So I think this whole idea of discipline is useful. So, what did I read this week? I read my copy of Marvels, which is written by Kurt Busiek and illustrated by Alex Ross. It's a good book. It's got great art. It has a great story, and it's kind of like a celebration of several decades of early Marvel work and early Marvel superheroes. Alex Ross allegedly, well, according to him, has had the idea of depicting the original Human Torch and then various Marvel storylines in one continuous story leading up to the death of Gwen Stacy, which is a major plot point in Spider-Man. The Everyman, a reporter, follows all of these superheroes, kind of always out of place, always watching as a bystander. And that's where the viewer is looking at this from. So it's the idea of treating these superheroes like they're larger than life, and people are just having to make peace because most of these dudes are active in New York. They're having to make peace with Captain America and Spider-Man bouncing all over the place while they're trying to live normal lives. And I think it does a very good job, like this picture of Giant Man, of capturing the scale of these larger-than-life characters. Kurt Busiek talks about how, as he was trying to create the narrative, he was simply using the comics as they happened in real time and depicting those images as if the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and all of these dudes are doing the same thing at the same time based on the publication history of the books, which is something only a fan would do, let's put it that way. Alex Ross also in the back kind of shows how he uses reference to get some of his compositions. And I know some of us artists don't want to admit that we need help, but god damn it, if you want to get it right, just, don't make things harder for yourself. I will note, though, that when I finished reading Marvels, which is quite a bittersweet, nostalgia-based story, it left me in a funk. So I just had to scribble stuff and try and get myself in a different headspace. And for whatever reason, I ended up drawing Mr. Sinister from the X-Men. And then realizing I don't know how to draw Mr. Sinister from the X-Men. So then I went looking for reference, and it's like I had the broad strokes. I know he's literally a white guy. I mean, white as the canvas, wearing black with some kind of bizarre ribbon cape, and I always thought that was bizarre and cool as a kid. Upon looking at reference, I discovered Mr. Sinister wears boots on his boots, and I'm just like, wow. If he's not the greatest character ever, I don't know who is. But I did draw Gorilla Grodd later this week, so maybe that's who it is. I also found out, while I was looking at reference, that Mr. Sinister's another one of those characters, like Sabretooth, who the creator had this very clear vision for him that was never realized within the books because the writer ended up going on to do other things. And this is one of those problems with Marvel Comics, right? So the thing is, Mr. Sinister's supposed to be a 10-year-old boy who hides behind the proxy of the creepy-looking dude. He's a 10-year-old boy who's immortal but can't age. And that's a very different thing than what Mr. Sinister is. But because it's not, Marvel Comics isn't owned by one guy with one story, that's not what we got. So another thing I read was Ruins, which is the opposite of Marvel's and is it's a parody of Marvel's, where instead of superheroes rising to great heights in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, they're basically destroyed by their own powers. And the main character is again an everyman, a journalist who's trying to figure out how America went down the toilet. Like, it starts with the Avengers being shot down by the government. And, you know, like Spider-Man, he gets bitten by a radioactive spider, but just gets sick and dies. And it's basically non-stop that. It's gallows humor, and it's very dark. And I recommend it to only those of strong mental disposition. And then for whatever reason, I found myself late in the week really just wanting to draw something silly and pointless. So I was like, I want to just draw Gorilla Grodd, who is a gorilla with a genius level IQ slapping the shit out of a predator. Why? Because I think that's funny. And having drawn it, I was right. I spent about an hour on this, and it put me in a bloody good mood, because everything's so fucking political now. And of course, I've drawn a gorilla, and someone at some point in the next 20 years will accuse me of being racist for this, because the world has gone to fucking pot. But I got to a really good place and a really good time. I really don't know how to draw Gorilla Grodd or gorillas. And while gorillas should be even bigger than I drew Gorilla Grodd, I just feel like for the work put in, this put me in a very nice place in my head. And I feel that kind of sums up the week. Doing a little bit more of what I should, but not finding a way to trick myself into doing it has been very beneficial. I'm hoping to keep this going next week. I don't want to come up with anything specific, because that's when I start to turn against those plans. It's just the headspace I typically find myself in. So that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 250, and I will see you next time. One day this stuff's going to be on my Tumblr account when I've decided social media is fit for human consumption. Don't expect it to be this week or next week, though.